Hey everybody, Brandon with Task Force Pest and Mold here, and today I'm going to answer an age-old question that I get asked all the time. I've probably been asked this question at least 300 times in the last 12 years, and that's what product works best to waterproof my basement with? Stay with me. Like I said, we're going over waterproofers today, and I actually added a third contender of my own, one that I love to use to this category, and that's closed cell foam. So the reason why I decided to use the large gap foam for this one is because the chemical makeup of this is essentially polyurethane foam, which is exactly what we use in our two-component closed cell spray foam rig. Open cell is a totally different story, and it's not used as a waterproofer, but closed cell is. So getting into the bulk of today's question, which one is best? Honestly, you're gotta be hard pressed to pick one. And the reason is each one of these are designed to go on three different applications. They're not really designed to be interchangeable, especially not the spray foam. So the one I'm going to start with is the spray foam. So let's get these out of the way. And spray foam in particular adds R value to your exterior wall. So a lot of times if you pull down the insulation from the floor, you can use the insulation or the R value in the walls of your crawl space or basement to make up for that R value you've lost in the floor. So this is a good way to seal and air seal and add R value to your walls all in one go. Typically, closed cell spray foam insulation adds about anywhere between 6 to 7 R value per inch. So typically when we're treating houses, we either have to put this on in essentially a little bit over 3 inches to get it to the R19 that's required in our area, or we just use it as added R value for what we're already using. So stay with me, and we're going to go over to the science area of Task Force Pest Control, and we'll show you the intricate science behind how all this works. So this is a paver. This is typically made out of concrete. This is the same exact concrete that they use to make cinder block with, which is typically what your foundation block wall is made of. And I want to show you something very interesting. When you pour water onto cinder block, it absorbs. This is an extremely porous material, and you'll notice that I can pour just about this entire container of water on here, and we can get this entire thing to absorb through this block. The thing is, unlike a sponge that'll only absorb so much before it stops absorbing water, your foundation block wall, instead of gravity pushing the water down, you have what's called hydrostatic pressure. So imagine this being the side of your foundation wall. You have water that would normally perk down into the ground, and it can either go down or it can go to the side into the wall. It's going to go into the wall more often than not. So as soon as this is taken a good bit, I want to show you another cool factor about this. So now it's kind of reaching a point where the water is going much slower than normal, and that's because all the holes, all the pores are filled with water right now. Right now, gravity is the only thing pushing this in. There's not two forms of pressure. Normally against a wall, if this were a side wall, it would have gravity pushing down and then hydrostatic pressure pushing it into the wall. So let's actually move this a little bit. And there we go. And that's 8 fluid ounces. So all in all, it's about 4 fluid ounces that we've put into this block. And if you notice, there's no indication on this side of the block that it's come through yet. This shows you how much water it takes to get through a cinder block. Anytime it rains, anytime you have any kind of flooding, all that water is coming through the block. So if you see this, or you'll see a cinder block in your crawl space, your basement, and you see these watermarks where the brick or the block is darker in certain spaces, that means you have hydrostatic pressure getting through the block. Typically what they would do is on the opposite side of this block, they would put some kind of rubber sealant. But that rubber sealant only lasts about 5 to 8 years. And typically needs to be maintained just like anything else in your house. Alright, so here is that same block that we had the water on, turned to its opposite side, and covered with closed cell foam. And if you look, well, it's really hard to see on camera, but that water's not going anywhere. We'll give it a minute just to let it sit. What we'll do is we'll pick it up. And you can see all the water comes right off. All the water is beating up on the block right now. And this is a waterproof barrier. Next up here, we have the Behr Dry Plus. And I did this in 2 separate ways because I wanted to show people. This is the first coat done correctly. This is 2 coats done correctly. And over here on the side is a coat done incorrectly. You can tell by all the pores that you can see where the block isn't completely covered. Most of the time when I see people apply this, this is how they apply it. And I just wanted to kind of give a tip while we're doing this to explain that this is incorrect. You need to see white all the way through. And even with the one with just 1 coat, you can still see some spots where there's some open pores. And where the 2 coats are put on, it's definitely not as bad. But for this one, we're going to do more of a thimble test. So over here, where it was applied, it went straight through the brick, just like it did before. No change at all. Do it to where there's been 1 coat. Looks like it's going pretty strong. I can definitely see some spots where it's still going through the block, but it's not going as quickly as it was with it being unprotected. So 1 coat is definitely better than nothing. You can see it was just a small little bit of runoff. And then over here, oh yeah. Where there's been 2 coats, it's not even absorbing into the block at all. It's completely displaced off the brick, or off the block. moving it around doesn't change that at all either. We'll give it another minute, just like we did with the sample on the side where we did one coat. And now, much more water resistance. Next up here we have Drylok. Did it the same way as Behr. We did a side where one coat was kind of put on haphazardly, a side where one coat was done correctly, and then a side where two coats was applied. I'm actually kind of surprised by this so far, because I imagined it would have absorbed into the block on the side that was barely put on. Some just ran off down my hand. Give it a minute. Aside from what rolled off my hand, that probably would have been about as much as the Behr did on one coat. So I'm actually really surprised that there's obviously still some wetness here from where the water is kind of sticking into the pores and getting through in some spaces. But it definitely did a lot better than Behr's haphazard application. Let's try it on the one coat. It's actually sitting in pretty decent. Not getting absorbed into the block at all. So I will say one of the things that makes Drylok so durable, what makes this such a good product, is all those pieces of concrete mix that are mixed into the paint fills in any of the pores inside of the cinder block. So any little pore that was in here that you would normally see that the water would find its way through, those little pieces of concrete mix are actually getting inside of those little pores and preventing water. It's kind of like having its own caulk system built into the paint. So it caulks the little holes shut as you're painting it. It's been a minute. That was a decent amount of water coming off of there. Might have actually been all of it. Nope, that wasn't as much as last time. And then for our final test, we'll see how it does when we put it on the side with two coats. So far, just like the Behr Dry Plus, it's not, or it's displaced from the block itself, so it's not sinking in anywhere on the block. We'll give it a minute, allow that to sit on there. And bam. In conclusion, any one of these three products will work as a waterproofer. They all work really well. There are a couple of different reasons why you may want to use one over the other. So I will say that Behr is a little more expensive. So looking it up at the time of this video, Behr Dry Plus is being sold for about $31 a gallon. Drylok is being sold for about $37 a gallon. So it's not a huge price difference, but keep in mind in an average crawl space, you're going to need at least somewhere between 5 and 7 gallons to cover the block wall in an average crawl space, at least from my experience, the average crawl space that I do. So keep that in mind. It might not be that big of a deal, but if you're doing 7 of them, kind of adds up. It's about 50 or a little less than $50 about there after tax. So that could be a point of contention for you. Another thing to notice is that on the container for both of them, they both say they require 2 coats. So Drylok does say it does between 75 and 100 square feet. Behr Dry Plus says it can do anywhere between 70 and 125 square feet. And Behr also says that it resists 12 psi of water pressure, whereas Drylok says it can hold back 10 psi water pressure. So in the long run, it does appear that Behr is a better product. My only contention with Behr is that they kind of push the fact that you can use a sprayer to apply it. You can use essentially any sprayer to apply Behr Dry Plus because it's honestly it's a latex paint. The only thing that kind of sucks about that is trying to apply a waterproof product with a sprayer. It's really hard to get it into all those pores in a porous material such as concrete or cinder block. Drylok has those little pieces of cement mix inside the mixture, so they do get inside those pores a lot better with one coat. So second coat's really just kind of an extra layer of protection. So that's a plus. And on the subject of hydrostatic PSI, in order for a water column, a 1 meter column of water, which is about 3.28 feet, that produces about 1.42 psi of water pressure. So even on here, when you have 3 meters, which is almost 10 feet, column of water, the hydrostatic pressure is only 4.27 psi. So you would have to have an insane amount of water behind the block in order to reach the 10 psi and 12 psi level of resistance that these two products can provide. So that's a plus. That's definitely something that I think these products would work really well for, regardless of who's going to apply it. I will say, Drylok, you do not want to put Drylok in a sprayer of any kind ever. Behr is actually labeled for it. You can use a sprayer with Behr. It does go on. I would recommend if you're going to use a sprayer, spray it on. If you have someone with you to help, have them roll it on behind you before it dries. Or I would spray it with one hand as I'm rolling it with a roller with the other hand to make sure it gets into all those cracks and crevices in the masonry. Drylok can only be sprayed if you are really, really smart about it. You can get what's called a hopper gun. One of these babies. I actually picked this one up from Home Depot. Not every Home Depot in my area had it. There was only one within like a 50-mile radius of me that had it. But I had to get it to try it. And it doesn't work too bad. Still recommend rolling it behind the spray application though. Which is designed to spray drywall mud onto drywall. And you essentially hook it up to an air compressor, and it's an air gun that you pour the Drylok into the hopper and you pull the trigger and it'll shoot the Drylok onto the wall. But again, if you're going to spray it like that, I would highly recommend using a roller or a brush afterwards to go over it and make sure you get into all those cracks and crevices. But if you ask me, closed cell foam is the undisputed winner when it comes to water sealing. Because A, it's water sealing, just like the other products are. It's providing R value. So you're actually getting insulation out of it. Like I said before, it's typically between R6 and R7. The product in the can actually, upon reading it, says it's R5 per inch. but the product that we typically use is our 6.5 per inch. You get that air seal throughout it as well, and it's a one layer application. You only have to go over it with one coat. And because it's an expanding foam, as soon as you apply it, if you didn't get it in all cracks and crevices, or even if you don't get the two applications together, they expand to fill the gaps. So it's much, much easier to use, and the benefits are just so much better. So I've been Brandon with Task Force Pest Control. Please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you can, and let me know if there's other waterproofers you want me to test out, and we'll get to it. We'll get some more blocks and we'll hit it up and see how it goes. I love doing stuff like this. I love doing these little experiments. I'm really interested in getting some more going and seeing what we can do. Thank you.